Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm going to use this recording, but if I do, then down underneath there'll be something like a transcript or a link to an analysis by ChatGPT of the soundtrack. And what I'm wanting to capture here is a sort of a status report on the progress of Resilience Network's Solar Challenge project. We started out the first few months 2 years ago with the aim to create a project that would help communities become more resilient through getting solar energy in, rooftop solar. So the idea is very, very simple in its simplest presentation to people. The idea is that you will get the opportunity to have solar on your roof, solar panels and storage for your house at no cost up front, the cost being met by the community through a co-op of which you become a member through having solar on your roof. And you get the solar energy, you get the use of the solar energy not for free, but at reduced cost. So you're buying the solar energy from your own roof. You didn't pay for the panels, but you are paying for the electricity. And what you're paying for the electricity is being used to pay off the cost of the panels. But it's being looked after by the community. And so it's very low risk and it's not complicated for you to get the solar panels. That's the idea. The idea is to make it simple and easy, and for the solar panels to bring you lower energy bills and to help you become lower carbon in your emissions, more resilient in your house. So you've got basically got a power supply that's likely to keep going if there's a power cut and so on. And what makes it complicated is that it hasn't been done quite like this. In some communities, councils and others have arranged grants so that people can have solar, but the grants run out. In the past, starting from 2011, there were feed-in tariffs where the government paid people for energy that they produced, but those ran out in about 2018, something like that. And now we're looking for, okay, how can we make this whole thing stand up based on community self-finance? So for the last year, we've been running a feasibility study, talking to lawyers about the legality of doing it, talking to the grid about making connections to houses, talking to installers about the cost of solar, and modeling this financially, and trying to figure out how we can get this arrangement where the billing for the energy is handled through the energy company. So your energy bill comes in and it's got, I've used so much energy this month. Some of it was generated on my roof. Some of it was generated when I wasn't at home, but I used it because I've got a battery. And some of it, so I hopefully used quite a lot of the energy generated on my roof, and I got that at a discount. And some of it has been exported because I didn't use it. Okay, the main complexity that we have, we've solved a few problems in the last year that were standing in the way of making the project work. One of them is actually, is there an energy company who can do billing like this? And it turns out a few years ago, we had this organized with Bristol Energy Co-op, planning to do a similar project in Lockleys called Lockleys Love Solar, where we would put a solar farm on the roofs of quite a few houses and share that solar energy between the houses and their neighbours. And we were going to work with Bristol Energy Company to handle the billing. And along came COVID, and the council decided, after spending 27 million on Bristol Energy Company, that it probably wasn't ever going to see a return, and it sold it off, which was sad because we'd had grant funding from a project called of course, Next Generation Energy. It was £1 million, £1.5 million government lottery grant through a group called Power to Change, and they spread that out into 10 next generation energy projects, and ours was one of them. And we were doing just fine until COVID came along and Bristol Energy was sold off. The savings were a little bit marginal, but 3 years later, they're better. And we've come back with a new project. And the idea is to look at the areas around Bristol that are less well off, typically former council estates, and find a few clusters of homes and put solar and storage on them, and recruiting through community centres, recruiting households, getting people cheaper energy, and demonstrating the possibility that this will work. What is making it possible is something that a group called Energy Local in Wales have been working on for some time. In the Energy Local project, they, within a particular substation area in Bethesda, they've got a energy generator, a hydro scheme, and they've got a community of energy users, and they brought them together in an energy club, and the energy from the generator is spread between the users. And it's not sold to the grid at wholesale price and bought back by the users at a much increased retail price. It's sold by the generator at what they call a match price, and it's bought by the users at the same price. And so it appears that the users aren't paying for energy transmission, and it's done because they're all working in a single enterprise, and the bill is, the phrase is, netted out. So you've got all these sites for your enterprise, and the generation is allowed against the consumption. Overall, of course, they're still buying some energy, but this netting out happens. And there's been a discussion about whether this is fair and whether we want to encourage it or not, but it's well understood that this is what's needed to enable local energy producers to share energy within the community. And people do pay anyway for the use of the local network because you have a service charge on your energy bill, and that's paying for the infrastructure. And if you can generate some energy on a collection of roofs, solar on a bunch of roofs, and use it in those same houses and other ones and net it all out, then that would be great. This has taken a while to arrive, and it's only been announced in the last weeks that this P442, it's an OFGEM regulation that allows this netting to happen. And once it's allowed and once it's legal, then energy companies can work with that and change their billing systems to handle what we call third-party solar. So the first party is you're the user. The second party is the energy company that you're buying it from. And the third party is the community group that's owning the panels. So this has just come on the fore, just arrived on the scene. We heard about it at a conference organized by the Southwest Net Zero Hub in Taunton a couple of weeks ago. And right away we had a meeting. We heard about it from representatives of the national grid, and right away we had a meeting organized with them to discuss setting up a project where there's the possibility that we might get what's called a SIF, a Strategic Innovation Fund grant, which isn't available to community groups, but it is available to the grid and power companies. So working with the grid, we could get a SIF grant to explore how to generate energy and share it locally. And we also have a sort of slightly distant relationship with the energy company that Energy Local have been working with in Bethesda, but we also have contact with Centrica, who own the gas grid and are a large energy company with something like 24 million customers in Europe. We applied to them for a Energy for Tomorrow grant, did a presentation to them, which I might show you because it shows the ideas, and came out of it with them saying, well, you obviously got a good plan. It's well thought through. It's quite strategic. It's complex. It's not going to be easy to do. We think you need help and we want to give you support. And Centrica have a project called Energized Futures, and they have, or rather, they have a program called Energized Futures and a team, and they have a project called Energy Res, which is a European project, and they have patented software for working with solar and storage and optimizing it, working together. So they would be a great partner to work with to develop the billing system that we need for this. There's nothing to stop us getting on if we're working on this relationship, and we could have a SIF grant with Centrica as well that would fund us to work with them to develop the billing software that would handle customers having this. So that's pretty exciting. There's more spin-offs from this. One is that the government has been asking community groups to comment on how energy could be, community energy could be scaled up. And community energy mostly at the moment is things like, well, solar farms and wind farms, like the new wind turbine that Ambition Lawrence Western have got, and solar on, big roofs like schools and community centres. But there's not much, by the way, of community solar on domestic roofs, except, occasionally where there's been grant funding. We're trying to make it work so that it doesn't need grant funding. It can be commercially funded and could get to scale. And the Council for the Protection of Rural England, what have they got to do with it? Well, they love fields, and they prefer to see fields not covered with solar farms and wind farms. So they've done the work to show that there's room for 40 to 50 gigawatts of solar on the roofs of our cities. And they're saying, why don't you do that first before you come on fields? And it's a good point. And one of the answers is, well, the regulations didn't make it possible or easy, but now they do. And there's the possibility to offer people what we think is at least a third saving on their energy bill through efficiently generating energy. This isn't going to put a lot of pressure on the grid because you're talking about generating energy where it's used. So this is kind of the idea that I want to get across in a presentation I'm doing tomorrow for a Quaker group, but also in an energy update. And this is the ideas that we'll be working on for the next year. And it's not just about, what the CPRE are saying is, we've got the opportunity of 40 to 50 gigawatts at the moment. Community energy in the UK is about 400 megawatts. 40 to 50 gigawatts is scaling up by 2 orders of magnitude, times 10 and then times 10 again. So if the government's asking how can you scale up community energy, this is really scaling up community energy, the potential to do 10 times as much. In fact, in their local energy plan, they're talking about a quarter of that, communities doing 12 gigawatts of solar. So they're really ambitious that communities should have own a lot of their own energy. And here's an opportunity to do just that. And in Bristol, we've got the ambition to be net zero by 2030. But since the proposal was adopted by the council, there have been studies to see how well we are doing. And the One City Climate Strategy information pack, resource pack, shows that there's room for 500 megawatts of solar on Bristol's roofs, probably double that now that solar panels are more efficient. But at the moment, a study done a couple of years ago showed that we were falling short of the plans by 400 kilotons of solar, 400,000 tons of emissions are not yet generated in the plan. And we're saying, well, if you put not just 500 megawatts, but a gigawatt of solar on our roofs, that, depending on how you look at it, would get rid of, save maybe around a simple estimate. Our best estimate is about 140,000 tons of emissions. So that's a good chunk of 400,000 tons. But if you use just half of that energy to power electric cars, then you're displacing fossil fuel use. If you're generating solar off your roofs, you're displacing some of the grid energy, but some of the grid energy is made with renewables anyway. But if you're displacing petrol car engine use with electricity, you're directly getting rid of emissions. This takes you well over 400,000 tons of emissions. So this strategy would create a just transition. Ideas for a just transition here. This is what we need to do to make a just transition. And that's to work with disadvantaged people. It's to help households that are less well off. And by starting off with our project in the less affluent areas of Bristol, the former council estates around the edge, we're tackling fuel poverty straight away, creating jobs in low-income communities, tackling the emissions that we need to tackle, using our communities, helping our communities get lower cost energy, improving our local economies. A collection of points, all of which are good, and all of which we will promote and learn about over the, months and years. Where are we now? We're in 2025. We hope to have this pilot project running towards the end of the year. And then we would want to double it and double it and double it and double it again, so that by 2030, we are genuinely up to this scale of hundreds of megawatts of solar on our roofs, generating lots of energy and savings, and repeating this across the country so that the government is achieving its ambitions. We've already got one community that we've been talking to who have put in for a bid for what's called a Community Energy Fund Stage 2 grant, where we would work with them to do some solar farms, to put up a wind turbine, working with our associates and friends at Community Power Solutions, who put up this first large wind turbine on land in the UK for some time in Lawrence Weston. And we would be working with a a small housing estate to create a low carbon heat community where electricity is being generated using solar and stored and used with perhaps ground source heat pumps, perhaps air source heat pumps, or perhaps a technology called low frequency infrared heating to warm the homes. So that's an exciting project that will, it's another way of testing what we're doing in a community setting where you're looking to do all the different things that a community might want to do to become low carbon. So these are the ideas that it hasn't taken us too long to do this. We've been 25 minutes, could probably have saved a few. So in a half-hour talk and half an hour for questions, I think we can cover most of this ground. And during this year, we'll turn all this into plans, working with other community groups in Bristol around the legals, around project management, installations, and all the rest of it, so that we're using all the resources in our community, building our capabilities so that we can work steadily to doing this at a decent scale in our community, and using the wealth created and the momentum created and the skills created to do other retrofit work in the homes that need it most. So we're sort of community energy first, and then retrofitting homes to use that energy more efficiently, rather than saying we've got to retrofit all our homes and make them low carbon emission, and then maybe we can do some solar energy. Where our approach is the other way around, and we'll be discussing with people to see if this makes sense, if this approach makes sense, and we think it does, and we think we can clearly argue that it will. It only takes a day or less than a day to put solar on a roof, whereas it can take weeks or even months to retrofit a house. Solar can generate as much energy as a house uses renewably. Insulation might halve the house's use of energy, but costing a lot more and taking a lot longer. So we're looking at working with this code P442, which is the enabler. It's the breakthrough that allows us to use this shared energy approach. So it's new to community energy. We've done solar farms, we've done big school roofs, we've done wind turbines. Now we're talking about domestic energy, and that is the biggest opportunity to generate energy closest to the point where we use it. We use it in our homes. Let's generate it on our roofs. Uses least wiring, least grid reinforcement, and all the rest of it. We think this makes sense. It hasn't been practically or possible, and the financials didn't stack up until a year or so ago. Batteries cost too much. Solar cost too much. Now the costs come down of batteries and storage to the point where you can save at least a third off an energy bill, we think. And once the cost of the solar is paid off, then the energy bills come down further. So we're at a good point to start joining the solar revolution in our communities, cutting people's energy bills, making our local economies more thriving and sustainable. And that's what this project is attempting to do. And I'm going to stop here and feed this to ChatGPT, see what it, put it up on YouTube, share it, put the transcript to ChatGPT and see what it comes up with as extra thoughts and a summary and a strategy. And if I do post all this, then what ChatGPT says will be available in a document as a summary if you click on the link in the description below the video on YouTube. Okay. There'll be others. There's ways to contact Resilience Network, and we look forward to working with you in your community. Should be fun. Where's the stop button? Pause recording. Stop recording here.